button. Talking about college, so fun. Okay, all right. We may or may not be live. So with all of that, I am Aundra Anderson. I am the program coordinator for Next Generation Scholars, which is through Maryland Business Roundtable for Education. And we get really excited about the future. We want to help every student put together a plan for success for the future. And with that in mind, we have created this really awesome Just for Juniors series for students who are in their junior year of high school, thinking about that next step. What happens when you walk across that stage, hopefully in person, on graduation day next year? What are you doing next? So we want to dive into the whole college process from start to submitting that application and then dealing with financial aid. What does that involve? What does that entail? And I am so excited that we have a special guest to chat about all of those great things. We are focusing today on how to search for colleges. So that is our primary focus, but sometimes when people in education get together, amazing other things happen. So maybe we'll have some of that happening today too. But I would love to introduce our guest. His name is Rudy Ruiz, and he is with FourPoint Education. So Rudy, please, thank you so much for being here today, for being willing to chat about this really important topic. And can you share more about FourPoint Education and more about yourself?
Absolutely, Aundra. I really appreciate the opportunity to reconnect with you and with the Business Roundtable and the Next Gen Scholars and their families. I really love what the Next Gen Scholars is doing, and love the work that you're doing in support of them. Myself, having been a Business Roundtable team member and now continuing to support schools and communities around the country, it's just really rewarding to get a chance to speak directly to students and families about the topic. And it's one that I've been living through lately. I've got 3 teenage boys now, and my oldest is going to be graduating this year. And I've got one who's a sophomore as well. So we're right in there with you, Next Gen Scholars, in terms of thinking this all through, and excited to discuss it with you today. In terms of what I do at FourPoint Education Partners, like I mentioned, I have the opportunity to work with and support schools and districts and communities around the country with, in particular, making sure that the young people and their families and the adults who support them in schools have the resources that they need, and good guidance on how to make sure that everybody knows how to make a good fit choice for after high school.
That's awesome. That is so perfect. I love when we're able to align our thoughts and efforts and come together on these really important topics. So again, thank you so much. So let's just dive in. This is a big one. What is the best way to get started with the college search? What is a good first step?
Great question. Yeah, I think a lot of times we have these discussions, at home and in the community. I know right now we're kind of social distancing, but we still have talk with different people in the community. Again, whether it be, family within the home, extended family from other parts of, the state or the country, and so on. And each of those conversations can provide really great insights. And so, I encourage people to, not overthink it and not feel like as an adult, you've got to be an expert, and as a young person to feel like, you can only get advice from, somebody who is only a counselor. Of course, our school counselors are experts on this, and our next gen coordinators are wonderful resources, but you have many other people typically in your circle, in your community, who also have had some college experience, whether they've earned a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree, or maybe they had an experience and haven't quite completed a degree yet. They've got good insights to share with you. And so every conversation is a chance to learn something. And in particular, now that we're thinking about college, it's good to think about what our different options are and to hear what people's experiences are, because we can get a little bit of wisdom from everybody.
That's so true. I mean, really, really consider the people around you, consider what can they bring to the table, what insight do they have, and start those conversations happening. I love that. And one of the things that we do with the Next Generation Scholars Program is career tours. So we introduce students to potential networks of people that they can go back to and say, now, how did you get this job? What was your
Right.
career path? What did you study in college? And I will say, and I would love to dive into this question with you, they're finding that there's no one perfect path. There's no one like straight right path to follow. So can you talk about your own path, just to kind of give that background of, I thought I was going to do this and this is what I studied and now this is what I do. I always love hearing that, and I think it really, students walk away with some good ideas after hearing those kinds of things.
Yes, absolutely. And I like that you shared about the career conversations as a starting point, because really, when you think about it, going to college, it's a big investment. You want to make sure that, you're getting your money's worth, but also you're, you knowing what you're going there for, what the purpose is. Obviously, you're going to grow as a person in so many different ways, but you want to make sure that there's some connection between what you might do in the future and then your educational journey to get there. And so for myself, I feel like it is a good example. I am somebody who, was, usually really always into school, to be honest with you, was always trying to get, on the honor roll and things like that. But since I was so focused on, getting the grade and being on an honor roll, I didn't necessarily always think, a few years ahead and to think about, what career I was interested in. And so, for myself being kind of a, straight A type of student, I was like, oh, well, straight A type of students, things that they're interested in include being a doctor. Yeah, that sounds challenging. That sounds like it'll be a good fit for me, a good challenge for me. And so when I was looking at different universities, I was looking at, what would be quote unquote the best, schools I could get into. And so looking at different options. For myself, I was a scholar athlete. I grew up wrestling and I'm still involved in wrestling today. And so that was one of the fit factors that I was looking at was, where would there be a good program at a good school that would be, welcoming to me essentially. And so I really was exploring all around the country at the time and had a great time doing that. And one of the things that I find interesting is that while the university that I attended has, many great success stories, many great programs, there are some programs that my university did not have. My university, while it has a big name, doesn't actually have all that many students. I think there were less than 2,000 students in my incoming class. And so, when I think about some of the programs, like, for example, my wife is a successful, registered nurse. We didn't have a nursing program at my school. So, if somebody were interested in becoming a nurse or even myself ultimately becoming a teacher, we really didn't have an education program to become a teacher within that 4 years of getting your bachelor's degree. So that would have been something that I had to do extra, which is what ended up happening. So for myself, I started out, pre-med as they call it. And so there's lots of different options. If you're interested in becoming a doctor or going into a medical career, there are really a set of core courses that you have to take, and you can major in lots of different things and become a doctor eventually. And so for myself, I was looking at a couple of different options as a freshman, but I didn't have as much science lab experience in high school as a lot of other people. And once I got in the lab in college, I was like, this really is not, a good fit for me. This is not all that interesting to me. And I'm really not that comfortable with it. And so what I ended up majoring in was linguistics, the study of language. And so my first job out of college was actually helping computers sound more human. And so I was working in speech synthesis, and it was a really cool job. I was able to do it remotely. So, 21 years ago, I was doing remote work, distance, work from home, before it was even kind of, a thing like it is now. And so for myself, growing up with a big family from, Milwaukee in the Midwest, I basically said, well, you know what, I'm doing my work from my laptop. I don't have to live in, expensive Silicon Valley. I can, save some money and, go back and hang out with my family and just email my work from Milwaukee. So I did that work for about a year. And then at the end of that year, they said, well, good job on that 1-year contract. Good luck in your future. And so I ended up, basically starting out as a high school math teacher after that. pretty big pivot in some ways, but math was always my natural love. And I really fell in love with just working with high school students. I was teaching at what would have been my neighborhood public high school and just fell in love with that and just fell in love with education. So I just kind of continued along those lines, got my master's in education. Now I'm finishing up my doctorate in education. So again, coming out of high school, I never would have imagined that was the direction I would take. But like you said, you know, we each have our own journey and we learn more about ourselves along the way. And so, you know, it's good to think about your career in order to have a nice, you know, tight, you know, line and journey, but that's not often the way that, that a lot of people's lives go.
That's so true. Oh, thank you. It's so good to hear about somebody's journey. I think it's so important for students to hear that and understand that, you know, you might have this as your particular destination, but it looks like this to get there, and you might change along the way and discover something else about yourself that is more intriguing. So with that in mind, is that a factor that a student should consider when looking at colleges, or what other factors should they consider, right? When I worked in admissions, we used to say, like, we are training you for jobs that don't exist. And that was like a big selling point of our school, that we wanted them to be thinkers and not just be stuck or tied to one particular major. So what are some of those factors? What do you think goes into making that college search process? What are those factors to consider?
Yeah, I'm glad to walk through a few of them. I've got a number of people on my team that have kind of helped me think through this and helped me guide other communities around the country in this. And so we have a handy acronym that we put together that actually, the acronym is ACCESS, just like the word ACCESS. So I'll do a little screen share real briefly, and then I'll kind of walk through them after that. But what I'm sharing is actually available at our website for a free download. It's fourpointeducation.com/resources. But let me share this fit factors sheet with you. And this is something that, again, we've shared with other communities around the country. And each of the letters stands for a fit factor that is important as you're making your choice. So I'll share them briefly, and then I'll kind of elaborate a bit on them. The A is for accessibility, and I'll talk about that in different ways. The first C is for culture and climate. The second C is for cost. The E is for employable majors. So that's the connection to careers that we were just talking about. And then the S we use for student support services. So I'm going to elaborate on each of those, but like I said, that sheet's available for download. And we also have a fun little game that people can play that's based on that to kind of think these things through. But when we talk about accessibility, there's a few different ways we think about that. We know that, you know, obviously with the shutdown now, there's, you know, different types of access, and lots of students are learning online primarily. But accessibility means not only where is the campus located, how big is the campus, but also something that students often overlook in high school is just the accessibility as well of faculty and staff. So in high school, you're used to being able to, you know, talk to your teacher pretty regularly, pretty often. That's not always the case in college or at your university, depending on the class and depending on, you know, the university. In some universities, you may have 35,000 students. And so it's important to understand, you know, what you might be getting into, especially in the first year, since the first year can be such a culture change. And so that kind of brings me to the second point, which is culture and climate. And so culture and climate, we can think about in different ways. In some ways, there's one aspect of, you know, do I have, you know, the academic fit? Do I have the grades and the test scores maybe to get into a school that I'm interested in? But also it's important to think about, you know, in some ways connected to that, even if I get in, is it going to be a supportive environment for me? The one that I know, you know, students from backgrounds like mine have good support and are successful at this institution. Because sometimes, you know, you see a big name, you're used to that name, and you think, oh, you know, people love that school, it's going to be great. But that school might not actually be that great at supporting you. And so it's good to find out more about that. Another aspect of culture and climate is also the campus life. So if you're into certain extracurriculars or used to working with certain, you know, student groups, that's something to look at the college level, because you're probably going to want to continue in some groups like that. And so it's important to see, what is out there. And even if it's not there, you might be able to create a group like that of your own, but it's good to know what your options are on that front. So that's what we talk about with culture and climate. And then the other C is around cost. And so there's the actual cost, which is not just kind of the sticker price. You might see that, oh, this college costs $10,000. Well, we got to factor in, all the other pieces that go into attending that institution. If it's, out of state, maybe there's some travel costs, lots of other things that go into that. So you want to kind of think through and kind of sketch that out. Again, your counselor can be a great help with that, your next gen coordinator. And then again, thinking about, what's going to be there to support you. We know that there's lots of financial aid out there. I know you all are hearing about the FAFSA already and getting ready to complete the FAFSA. So there are resources out there to help you get ready for that, like the FAFSA forecaster. So we encourage you to use the resources that are out there for free. There is another one as well that I would share because it's also free. It's called Tuition Fit. And so tuitionfit.com, you can set up a free account, and that will be really helpful to you, especially senior year. So we will want to check that out. And then the last, well, actually, I should say two more. The second to last letter of our ACCESS acronym is employable majors. And so again, sometimes we think about, things that are our passion, but we want to make sure we can think through how is my, passion going to help me also, live a rewarding life and live a fulfilling life and do the things that I want to do. I mentioned, I believe earlier that, for myself, one of my personal passions is the sport of wrestling. And so I'm still involved with wrestling today, but I don't depend on wrestling, to support my family. And so there are things that we can continue to do that maybe aren't our primary, vocation, but we can still continue to do. And so, and in terms of employable majors, we want to think through, again, depending on how much my family and I are going to end up paying for this institution and for this degree, is it going to be a good return on that investment? And so thinking about the fact that maybe I want to continue in dance, let's say, but maybe dance will be like my minor and I'll continue and have, either another major or maybe a dual major, but thinking through like, how can I make sure that the major that I'm in is going to help me not only, support and sustain my family, but even pay back, any maybe loans that I had to take to earn this degree, et cetera. So that's important to think about. Again, the career connection might not end up being the one that you thought it was going to be as a junior or a senior, but thinking that through will help guide you along the way. And then the last one in our acronym is student support services. And this is one that, when I think back to my college experience, one of the areas where I feel like I kind of fell short and I always advise others to do better on is just getting the support that you need, getting the help that you need. And again, for myself, being somebody who in high school was an A student, when I faced different challenges in college and I felt like I needed help, I had this like stigma, like, oh, you only go to tutoring if you're not smart enough, and not realizing that, hey, the students that are smart are the ones taking advantage of the tutoring that they paid for. So, sometimes you literally have services you paid for that you might be, you have to push your pride out of the way to take advantage of. And, especially with what's been going on this past year, there might be some, mental health services that you might need, that maybe you're getting some counseling now, that as you think through, like, what am I getting now in high school that maybe I'll continue to want or need in college, you'll want to look and see, what resources are out there. So colleges have writing centers, they've got tutoring centers, they've got lots of other services. So as you're comparing colleges, you can also see, how those services compare as well, so that you can be ready to take advantage of them when the time comes.
That's a lot of really good nuggets of information. And I love that you have that worksheet that is accessible. And I think we actually just popped a link into the comments that has the access to that access sheet, access to access. I love that. Hashtag access to access. We're going to make it a thing, Rudy. So I want to like deep dive on, or not, go a little deeper on a couple. I love that you mentioned the cost part with the sticker price, because working with students, I think that's the first thing that deters them from a school, is looking at that, whoa, they expect me to pay this much, but remembering that other factors are going to go into it. There's scholarships to apply for, financial aid, and making sure that you hit those deadlines to receive all of those benefits is something to keep in mind. And support, I think now more than ever, it's really important for students to be mindful of the place that they're going to make their home for the next few years. And, is it an environment where I feel supported? Is it an environment where I know there are people I can go to for whatever help it might be, social, emotional, or academic? And, is this something that they make available to all students, something that I can just go and take advantage of? I think you're right. I know when I went to college, that was not as big of a thing. There was a tutoring center, but it was in like the basement of the library and you just didn't go there. But now it's such a big integral part of the college search. So I'm really, really glad that you highlight that, because it is so important. So I want to touch on another thing. One of the things I think that helps with that college search is seeing the campus and feeling the environment. And I know that that's not easy to do right now. Some colleges are still offering that option, but that might not be the best choice for juniors to be visiting colleges. What are some things that they can be doing if they can't physically visit those schools?
Great question. I think there are a handful of options, and I'll take this opportunity before I forget to also plug your own app as well, Way to Be. And I think that the Next Gen Scholars are probably pretty familiar with it, just in terms of it being kind of a college and career exploration tool that's in their hands and provides quick and good answers, especially for colleges and universities in Maryland. So I think that's a good starting point, just to be able to kind of compare, like I said, in the palm of your hand, one college to another on a number of different factors, get some information on what majors do they have. Again, different colleges offer different programs and different majors. And again, if you have a certain type of career in mind, some colleges might not offer a program in that area. It's good to know who does have the programs that you're interested in. So that's a good start. I think also that most colleges and universities by this point have pretty solid kind of virtual tours available. And sometimes those are, as your teachers would say, asynchronous, where you can go and check it out anytime you want. And then others are actually can be live as well. And sometimes there are live events as well, in terms of what would normally be, maybe a college fair at your high school this spring. Now they're having some live online college fairs, so you can actually talk with folks and have a chance to explore. I think another area that probably fits most of you pretty well as well, and I won't say as an alternative, but maybe as an additional layer of information, is also social media. So seeing what's out there, not only in terms of what the university puts out itself, but also thinking about and checking out what are students saying about the school, especially first year students, because that'll give you a sense of what you might expect and what you might experience, kind of for good and for bad, and hopefully more for the good, but at least give you a real sense of what's beyond the folder that you might get in the mail from this college that really wants you to come, and give you a little bit more of an inside track. And so at the beginning of the call, I mentioned talking to, essentially, I was referring primarily to adults that you might talk to who have, like I said, maybe gone and graduated from different colleges, but also talk to, recent graduates from your school about colleges that they've attended. And the more you let people know what colleges you're curious about or interested in, the more they can say, oh, my cousin, my friend went there or goes there now. And those open up different doors for you to just hear different perspectives, because again, even on the same campus, if you have 1,000 students, that means you have 1,000 experiences and 1,000 perspectives on what it's like to go there. And so just because one person's having a good experience or a not so good experience doesn't mean that it's going to be your experience. But the more, insights you can get from talking to people, the better. And obviously, you'll probably have a high value for people who are closer to your age. So take advantage of the resources that are out there to hear that perspective.
That's awesome. And thank you for plugging that Way to Be app. That is such a great resource for students who are engaging with that career and college search, just to see what is out there and to listen to the journeys. There's so much that can be learned from, like you said, hearing people's journeys and experiences at that school or within that job. So that's a really good place to start. And I love that. Just talking to people around you and letting them know, I'm thinking about this major. What do you think about this college? Have you heard of it? But then also doing the research yourself. Like you said, look at the Way to Be app, look at virtual tours on college pages, kind of get a sense of what it looks like and the feel of it. And a lot of campuses will put you in touch with a current student as well. So that's something that, you could reach out and get that current student perspective, because like you said, they want to hear from people that are a little closer in age that are living the experience currently. So that's something that I think is really valuable. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So as like a final question, this is a big one. What is the best piece of advice that you could offer to a junior getting ready for the whole searching for college process? What do you think? I mean, we've talked about a lot of things, but if you had to kind of boil it down to one piece of advice, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it would be just be open to what you're learning about different colleges. I think sometimes it's easy to, again, lock in on a certain name and say, like, that's such a cool place and it looks amazing, or like my older friends went there and they loved it. So don't get too stuck on one. Give yourself the flexibility to weigh your different options and see what might be out there. Even in terms of thinking about, again, what programs you might be interested in. I'm thinking about a couple of the universities in the state that have amazing reputations and some amazing programs. And sometimes people will think, oh, let's say I want to major in computer science, and they think about going into a certain program and that they're going to have a certain outcome. And so using that example, sometimes what I've heard from folks is, what, that program is great, but it's very theoretical. And so if you're somebody who wants to really, be a coder and do programming, that's actually not a great program for that purpose. And so just be aware of that, because there might be another option that's even better that you didn't even know, was out there. But so the more you talk to people about what you are actually interested in, the better advice you can get. And I think, again, even in terms of like getting a head start, what I've been describing in terms of talking to people in the professional world, we call that networking, right? And so one of the things that you may have heard a little bit about in terms of career readiness, and even I think as high schoolers being in the Next Gen Scholars Program, you've probably heard a little bit about the idea of internships. Maybe some of you have had internships in high school. Well, the cool thing about college is that people are expecting that college students want to be interns. And so as you tell somebody, even as a junior in high school or a senior in high school, that you're interested in a certain career, that's also putting an idea in their head that, oh, maybe I can hire this student in a year or two or next summer or whenever it is, to help them get some experience, help me get a little extra help and whatever it might be. Or they may again say, oh, well, my friend works at such and such spot that could maybe use an intern. And so as you're having these conversations, you're actually laying some groundwork for yourself and planting some seeds for yourself that could come to fruition later, in some ways that has great value.
Yeah, I love that. And I think this all kind of boils down to those ideas of community, of network, of connections, and leaning into those people who can help you explore, like your next gen coordinator or your school counselor, people that are here to put you in touch with those different tools and connections. I think the biggest thing is just standing up and saying, I want to search for colleges. Declaring it is a good first step, right? That this is something that you want to do, and there will be people there to help you. That's such a good reminder, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us for this really important conversation. We have some very excited juniors in the Next Gen program, and of course, all over the state of Maryland who are thinking about their next steps. So this is really awesome way to kick off this series. So thank you so much, Rudy.
Wonderful. It's been my pleasure. Thanks so much, Aundra.
Thank you. So we are going to be coming back every single month with a new topic related to the college search process. So make sure to come back to this page and check out all of the great resources that we will have available just for juniors. And it all will culminate this summer. We are going to do a big college prep boot camp so that we can make sure you are putting your best foot forward, finding those great fit colleges for you, and getting ready for that next step. Thank you guys so much for listening today. And please make sure if you have any questions, go ahead and fill out those comments or send us a message. We are here to help you explore. Until then, check us out on the Way to Be app, and we'll see you next time.